Well, as the whole business world uh, becomes more complex, it tends to grow in different ways in different countries, uh, but it becomes very competitive too. And Dupont asked me to if I would investigate what was going on in Japan. We had a plant there, still do, I think, but there was also a lot of other things going on, peripheral things that might make more money in the long run. And um,
Were you still in film at this time?
yeah,
Still in films, okay.
um, but it was hardly, you could hardly call it film because we did so many other things then.
And when had you gone to Florence by this time?
Yes,
Okay, I thought so. This is
and so they said, would you be willing to go over to Japan and take a good look at what's really going on and what they may be stealing from us and what they're doing, and just fill us in on what this whole thing is. This is a lucrative business. So I said, sure, I'd be glad to do it. I've not been to Japan. I said, they said, we're going to assign a man to you that we've hired, and he's worked for us now about a year, and he does good work.
mm-hmm.
So we'll have him working for you. And they said, and then we'd like to send along with you um, a fellow from Luxembourg and from one of the other plants. It was a total of about four people, well, five people counting me, and said, and we can't give you any advice more than that. He said, this is it. So
You have a reconnaissance mission.
it was a reconnaissance mission,
Mhm.
exactly. Good term. Well, I took the job, picked up the fellas in the Tokyo airport coming in. They came in on a different flight and uh, introduced. Well, I knew them all. I already knew them from my visits to Luxembourg, but I did sort of introduce him to the Chinese fellow and so forth. And I said Chinese, it's Japanese, not
Mm-hmm.
Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a working organization at that point, and there was no direction whatsoever. So we sat down, had some meetings. I talked with a number of people, and then I was then staying in a real nice um, hotel downtown Japan, Tokyo, and I got talk, and I found one of the best ways to learn things, of course, is just to talk to people. Most Japanese who were staying in an ultra exclusive hotel speak perfect English.
Mm.
Um, Not all, but most of them.
Even then, and this was probably the 80s, I would think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And now the fellow that they had hired for me all wasn't exactly poor because he was one of the owners of the golf course in Tokyo. I mean, one of the that was shared,
Mm-hmm.
and he was not a poor person. He was short, chubby, a lot of fun, knew how to laugh,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, it didn't take long to we started to he started to introduce me to Tokyo, and the other guys would want to go too.
Because by that time you were kind of short and chubby too.
Oh yes, absolutely. So I fit right in. Most of the Japanese are not
Yeah, yeah.
tall people, so I fit perfectly, and I learned how to to go into the clubs, and um, yeah, I found out that the girls are not hookers that are hovering all over you. They're not hookers. In fact, some of them are Americans. So anyway, got introduced to the nightlife. In other words,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that was fun. And then the next day, we sat down and began to chart our course. And everybody had done their homework, so it wasn't like we were there just what do we do next? We knew the processes that were competitive. That we knew those that were going to give us a hard time. They knew those that we might be able to buy.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a very interesting thing. And we decided that the best thing to do once we'd gotten acclimated to Tokyo would be to go to visit the plants of these competitors. Take a good look at these plants, which we did. Now we went out on the railroads and the trains, of course, that was our introduction to high-speed rail travel. And I say high speed, I mean high speed.
Yeah, they were ahead of us on that.
Oh God, that thing
Yeah.
go.
Way ahead.
You 1 minute you'd be looking out the window at a big fish pond where they grew bred fish,
Mm-hmm.
and then the next second you'd be looking at something completely different. Over here was the big volcano that everybody knows about,
Yeah.
and it was a very interesting trip.
I bet it was.
And the way you examine these plants, of course, you couldn't go in and start talking to them.
No, competitors aren't known for being that helpful.
So we had to make arrangements to see the plant without being seen,
Mm-hmm.
and we did. Illegal, yeah, except that this is Japan, and what might be considered immoral and illegal in this country is not necessarily in Japan.
Well, you were still in public areas for the most part, as I know, and
Yeah.
as long as you can see it.
Well, we were more than that.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, just to give you an example of some of the things we did, was we were perusing this plant, and we were taking notes and getting good information, and we came upon a group of men just out of the other side of the fence.
Some vendors, maybe.
They were Japanese, obviously workers.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we think, oh God, we stumbled into it now. The police will be coming any minute. But we didn't quite happen that way. I told, of course, I didn't speak Japanese. I told our Japanese friend, I want you to ream these guys out for wasting their time, because they were sitting around like that. I said, you just act like they work for you.
Mm-hmm.
He said, oh. I said, try it. He said, ah.
Yeah.
And he did. He did exactly that. One of them pointed at him and so forth, and then talked to him, and they pointed at him, and they didn't know what was going on, of course.
Yeah, so you were speaking English to him as the big boss guy.
All right.
Yeah.
And so didn't take long till he started talking to them. Oh man, he was and they tucked tail and ran like hell.
I wonder how that played out for them the next day once they figured out that didn't
I don't
even
know
make
they
any
ever
sense.
figured it out.
Yeah,
But
that's funny.
those things happen over and over again. Those
Yeah, that's funny.
School bus children looking out the window. Melicans, oh!
Well, and there weren't that many Americans over there.
No, there
then.
weren't at that time.
Yes. When
And
David,
they never did get into Tokyo like they did in some of the places.
David and I were just starting to travel at that time, and we would go places. We would see very few Americans, but boy, did that change in the next 10 years.
Yeah.
Boy, that was a good time to travel. You're lucky you could go over there. Did you get up to any of the shrines?
Yes.
Good. You at least
We
got
sure
to see
did.
a little bit.
And some of them were very interesting. Some of them were quite surprising. They were religious, but at the same time, they were not really religious. I'll talk about that some other time. That's the whole story.
I'm glad you got to see a little bit beyond the factories. That's
Oh,
a
yeah.
part of the world I've not seen, and we plan on going there.
Mhm.
So let me stop the video there.